want to go to my guests. We are joined. Oh, where are you? I see the architecture in the background. How you doing,
It's
man?
it's a
Jerry
green
Gray.
screen.
Oh, it's a green screen. Okay,
Yeah.
I thought you were outside. Sometimes my guests are outside when they're doing the shows.
It's actually about 300 kilometers from here. It's a place called Liannan in Lianzhou, or it's actually Qingyuan. The city is Qingyuan. It's about 100 kilometers north of Guangzhou.
Interesting. God, I love the architecture of some of these places. It's one of the things that you notice most when you first like land somewhere, or when you first go
Well, you
moseying
won't
around.
see this when you land in Guangzhou or Shenzhen. You won't see this, but actually, literally from Shenzhen or from Guangzhou, this is 2 hours drive into the mountains.
Okay.
It's not far at all from Guangzhou.
Have you ridden your bicycle through there?
I actually have, but not recently. I did. I went through Lianzhou in May of this year, early or mid-May, and it was pouring with rain. Yeah, we went through those mountains on the way to Mongolia.
Oh, that's so cool. Oh,
Yeah.
that's so cool. And then be able to get to Mongolia also. Oh, that is so
Yeah,
cool.
yeah. That was the. I mean, the plan was to get to Mongolia, the country, and we ended up in Hohhot in Inner Mongolia because we had inadvertently we got involved with media, and they didn't follow us. We were not like an assisted ride, but they, on the way through China, going from the south to the north, the first big city you come to after Guangzhou, of course, which is just north of here, the first big city is Changsha, and they met us there and spent 3 or 4 days filming us. Then we went to Wuhan, which everybody in the world has heard of now, and they spent 5 days filming us there. Then we went to Zhengzhou and another 5 days. Now, we had planned for a kind of an overnight stop and maybe a rest day, another night, and then be on our way. But by the time we got to Hohhot, we were at 10 days behind schedule, and my co-rider had some other commitments, and yeah, we just got to the end of our time that we'd
Jerry,
allotted.
that's
So
so
we never
cool.
got to Mongolia. We stopped in Inner Mongolia.
Oh, that's so cool, man. That's so cool. And Jerry Gray.
Yeah,
Jerry
we
Gray
should
is host
dedicate
of,
we should dedicate one day to just talking about the bike ride. Let's move on to talk about geopolitics.
yeah. I don't know. I'm just fascinated by it, the fact that you've ridden so far throughout China. No, that's just so cool. I'm Jerry Gray. He's host of Jerry's Take on China. He's lived in China for more than 20 years and has traveled more than 30,000 kilometers by bicycle across the country. I think you have the award or the mantle of seeing more of that country, not in a car as you're driving by, but literally kilometer by bicycle.
Yeah,
So
I've
that's
seen more of the tarmac.
yeah. Yeah, let's talk about geopolitics. So one of the interesting things that I've seen, that I've noticed, there's been this, I don't want to call it an argument, but there's been at the very least a bit of controversy around this idea of whether Nepal was not a false flag, a color revolution, or whether Nepal was an organic protest. Now, there's been a strong argument for it being a color revolution. And the reason why I'm bringing this up is because if you look at what has been taking place, whether it was Cambodia and Thailand, whether it was Pakistan and India, whether it was Nepal and the color revolution in Nepal, what these things have in common is that all of these things are effectively around China. Now, one of China's strategies for dealing with this kind of let's say cutting off the straits, what is it called? Malacca, I believe. I may be getting the name wrong. It starts with an
The
M.
Straits of Malacca, out off
Malacca.
Malaysia and Singapore. Yeah.
Yeah, is that China's plan has been, okay, well, we'll develop land routes and we will expand those land routes. We'll make deals with many of these countries. We'll have the Belt and Road Initiative, et cetera. And I guess the question becomes, is what's taking place in regards to all of these countries being around China on fire, is that the response to trying to do this over land? That basically, it's like, okay, good idea trying to do this over land. Now let's have fire cities, countries that you need and require. Nepal was a Belt and Road country. Pakistan obviously is a Belt and Road country. Give me your thoughts
Yeah,
on this.
Pakistan's a little different. It is Belt and Road, yeah, but it's also what's called the China-Pakistan Economic Corridor, which is
Mhm.
also going to include Afghanistan, and Nepal, Bhutan will be side shows on that. They won't be sidelined; they'll be side shows as part of that China-Pakistan Economic Corridor.
Yeah.
There's also the Eurasian Economic Union, and I think if you asked 100 Americans about the Eurasian Economic Union, they'd go, the what? They just wouldn't have a clue that this is five of the former Soviet Union states, which are now independent countries, Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, Tajikistan, all the stands, and Russia. And they have a free trade agreement with Iran. And people tend to forget that these places are right on China's border. I know Iran is not, but it's on Pakistan's border, and Pakistan is on China's border. So, yeah, we're starting to see there's more than just a pattern of China's neighbors having color revolutions. There's a pattern of who is there supporting, funding, training, and there is definitely training going on. And it's always the same two big names and lots of smaller names, which can be traced back to those two bigger names. One of them is USAID, and the other one is the National Endowment for Democracy, NED. And one thing that we always forget is that USAID is not the spelling of aid, it's international development. And every single if I would encourage your readers to go to USAID's website. It closed down a while ago, then reopened again under the State Department, and USAID are in every single hotspot in the world. Now they pepper in some. We're providing this relief there and that relief there, but it's training for journalists, it's training for security, it's training for a whole lot of things that are not related to anything that affect America's national interests in America. They affect America's interests in a geopolitical scene. Go back to Nepal. Yes, there's some debate over whether or not it's a color revolution. I've stayed out of that debate. What I can say is that USAID are there, the NED are there, and a whole heap of other names that apply to these same groups. So if it's not a color revolution, maybe it's a mistake and they didn't plan this to happen and people are revolting against the potential of a color revolution. I don't know. I'm not going to get into that argument. That there's two or three people that I respect and admire enormously having disputes on Twitter, and I wish they wouldn't, but they do. And some people saying it is a color revolution, some people saying it isn't. The fact of the matter is Nepal is on fire and it is one of China's neighbors. So you can read into whatever that you like. It's a fact that it's happening, and that's something.
No, agreed. And I wasn't trying to drag you into the argument of whether it was a color revolution.
No,
I was just pointing. Yeah, I'm just pointing out that all of these, and I know exactly who you're talking about online. There was a pretty spirited argument. If I'm not mistaken, somebody got blocked. But either way, I guess my point is all of these things are taking place around China, and I don't think these things are coincidental. And as you point out, there's always some kind of organization associated with the U.S., some kind of organization.
Well, NED, if you go online and you look at USAID, NED, and any of their subsidiaries, the NDI, and a few others, there's lots of three-letter agencies involved in this, and none of them are the CIA because they're too secretive. But you go to, I've got a list here: Kazakhstan, Azerbaijan, Burma, North Korea, Philippines, Thailand, Sri Lanka, and I could go on. Every single country that has anything to do with China's diversification from an American and a European market. Every country that has that has got some kind of US governmental department or agency supporting them to try and spoil the arrangement that they have with China, every single one of them. Now, obviously, they're not going to change the arrangements with Russia, but they openly admit this. This is not like a conspiracy theory. Look what they're doing. They're trying to color revolution. They openly admit that they're trying to change some regimes because they don't like them, because the regime is not democratic. But the Philippines is democratic, and look what's going on there. India is democratic, and there are several things going on there. Thailand, okay, Thailand's a monarchy, but it has a good, strong democracy, the same as the UK does. These are democracies that are being interfered with because the democracy is not going the way the US would like their democracy to go. Asian people don't like this confrontational type of adversarial politics. Most Asian people, if you ask them, would much rather have a one-party system like China has than have an adversarial system like America has. I've never yet met a Chinese person who says, I think we should have a democracy like America's, they would just laugh at in your face if I suggested it to them. So, you can read that into it. I mean, they're going into these countries, and Taiwan is another example. It's not even a country, it's a province of China, which they accept is a province of China. And they're putting millions, over years, billions, but definitely every single year, millions of dollars into places like Taiwan to destabilize them so that they become a thorn in the side, presumably for China or Iran or
Yeah,
anywhere else.
yeah,
Somebody made the comment today that if they can't have a fight with China, they'll have a fight with the neighbors. If they can't have a fight with Russia, they'll have a fight with the neighbors. If they can't have a fight with Iran, they'll have a fight with the neighbors. This is what they do. They destabilize regions. Not a conspiracy, not a theory, fact. The Americans are destabilizing nations.
Now, what is China's response to this? I mean, I feel like this is move counter move on this kind of massive geopolitical
China
stage.
plays a very different game. Um, a lot of what America does is propaganda. They talk a lot. China acts. Um, we've mentioned this before. Jason Smith, a friend of mine who lives in Beijing, has written a book, and
Fantastic guy. Yeah.
yeah, and that tells you what China does. China goes into these countries and it says, "Look, don't pay attention to the media. Don't pay attention to this guy who's writing stories about China. What do you need? What can we do? How can we help you?" And that is what they do. So consequently, as a result of this, about 85, maybe more, 85% of the world views China in a positive light. There's
Mhm.
been quite recent polls and surveys to suggest that this is true. Even in places, believe it or not, even in places like Australia, where they have massive investments in propaganda, and Australians are the most misinformed people in the world on China, I would say they're not getting value for money, because what's happening in Australia is that people are looking at this and going, yeah, China's our largest trading partner. We need to, and China has just started a conflict in iron ore, and they've put a hold on some iron ore purchases. Now, Australia is the one developed nation in the world that has a negative growth in earnings, household income. It's about -8%. Now, even places like Germany, where they have all kinds of recessionary problems, their household income is growing by 0.5%, 1%, 2% in those countries that are doing well. Australia, it's not. Now, there's one good reason why they're not doing well, and that's because they're alienating China. China isn't doing anything to alienate them, but BHP is the largest iron ore company in the world. It's American controlled. They've changed their price structure, and China says, okay, you're changing the price structure. We'll stop buying from you until you put it back. They put their prices up. China says, you can't do that to us. So now, of course, the headlines say China holds Australia to ransom. No, because the biggest product that Australia ships out is iron ore. And it's about 70% of their gross exports. It's huge. I'm not talking
Wow.
little money here. We're talking about absolutely economy breaking numbers. If China stops buying, because the largest export out of Australia is iron ore, and the largest customer by a long way is China. So all Australia had to do was just keep the status quo, and they didn't, and they haven't. And now we're going to see Australia suffer enormously. And I've said this a few times. If Australia does not pull its finger out and start to recognize China as a, a friendly nation to them instead of an adversarial nation, then they're going to lose about 60% of their economy. They're going to go back to numbers that reflect similar numbers to the 1970s and 80s. I'm not talking about percentages. I'm not talking about a loss in, I'm talking about the numbers will be like 40 years ago, because they will lose their iron ore, they'll lose their beef, they'll lose their wine, they'll lose a lot of the things. Beef and wine are not big imports into China, but they are growing imports. They'll lose their sheep. Sheep's a big one into China, lamb and sheep, wool, all of these things that China buys from them, they're just going to stop buying. Australia are basically, they're a mineral and resource country, and with agriculture as well, primary industries. So they're going to lose
Mhm.
that because they have alienated their largest customer. And you can only poke a bear so many times before it growls at you. And that's what China's doing now. If you keep poking it, it will attack you. I'm not talking figuratively. I'm talking about economically. China will just, okay, we don't need your iron ore. We can get iron ore from West Africa. We can get iron ore from Brazil. We can get it from Indonesia. We can get everything we can get somewhere else. But the iron ore from Australia, I have to be honest, has a very much higher Fe content and is good stuff. But they're getting that now from Africa too.
And just to make your point, soybeans in the United States. A question was asked to the press secretary. Let me see if I can find this video. And they asked her very specifically, look, China has bought no soybeans from the US. And the farmers in the US are effectively suffering as a direct result of them not purchasing soybeans. And what do you have to say about that? Right? Oh, where is it? Because you can imagine that if you have a country of 1.4 billion people, and they were buying soybeans from the United States, and you have all of these farmers in the US. Okay, well, you've just lost the market of 1.4 billion people right here.
It gets even deeper than that, because the America was the largest supplier of soybeans, Brazil number 2, and Argentina number 3. Now, what America has just done is given Argentina $20 billion, and Argentina has just done a deal to reduce the price of soybeans.
Yes.
I don't know what's going on there. I mean, you would ask this question and they say, "Oh, you're ridiculous for bringing that up." This is what's her name, Caroline Leavitt. That's it. Yeah. This is her answer to everything. Oh, that's a ridiculous suggestion to bring that up, and you're an evil person, part of the fake news. That's their suggestion. I mean, really, can't you answer this question? Why did you give? Surely, if you're going to give Argentina a bailout, that's nothing wrong with that. Argentina needs a bailout. But you've got to put some restrictions on that bailout. You can't use this to discount stuff that we sell. And Donald Trump every single day is saying they're stealing our business. And now he's paying someone else to steal your business. I don't know the answer. I really don't. I saw that and I thought, that can't be right. I went Googling. And
no,
it is right.
It's correct. It's totally correct. If I'm not mistaken, the Trump administration held $18 billion or put a hold on 18 billion or something like that out of anger. But yeah, that's exactly what happened. For one, there is something wrong with giving a libertarian who believes in cutting government. We're going to cut government to the bone. We don't believe in government social programs. We don't believe in any of this stuff. We're going to explode our economy because we believe in capitalism so much. And then you turn around and say, hey, man, can I get $20 billion? Oh. No. It's like, no. No.
Well, you're right.
This is the clip that I was referring to, because what China did was targeted their sanctions, and I'll call it sanctions. When the U.S. decided to have its trade war, China said, "Okay, fair enough. If that's what you want to do, we'll do that." But they were very specific in who they were going after, and some of these people were Trump supporters. Like a lot of these people were hardcore Trump supporters, especially if you're talking about like in the farmlands in Iowa and those type of places. Yeah. And so she is right here. All right. This is Caroline effectively being asked a question that's damning. Let's hear her response.
Just killing. What about China, if I could? So China has not made one soybean purchase this year in the United States. I talked to a farmer yesterday who has about 1,000 acres in Iowa and said this is just killing her. Now, the president has been talking to President Xi. Could China not buying agriculture affect a possible meeting with the president? Would he not meet with Xi because China's refused to buy soybeans from the U.S.?
Look, I don't want to speak for the president and make a determination on that from this podium. But what I can tell you is that supporting America's farmers and doing what's best for them is at the top of the president's priority list, and it's at the top of the list for this administration right now. There have been several very high-level meetings on this very topic. We want to help our farmers, and we're exploring the best ways to do that. And I would anticipate there will be more to come on that very soon.
I don't even know why we have a press secretary. If I'm being blunt,
don't want to speak for the president. That's an interesting statement for the press secretary to make. I don't want to speak for the president. What's your job? It goes a little bit deeper than that as well, because I saw another interview with a farmer who's sitting in his tractor with his soybean field behind him and talking to a senator. Don't ask me the name of the senator, but effectively they said, well, the president's going to speak with Xi Jinping in November, And the guy said, well, hang on a second. November is when Brazil harvests its crop. And Brazil and China have a great relationship. So how is that going to help us now? We're already harvesting. We've got soybeans here that we can't sell. And how is it going to help us in November? And that's also true, because by November, America's soybeans will either be somewhere in storage, which is costing a lot of money, therefore the price will be higher, or they will be spoiled, which means they'll be destroyed, or they'll be given away to third world countries for whatever, for peanuts. But yeah, the fact is, even if Donald Trump does talk to Xi Jinping is just simply going to say, well, we did everything you asked us to do. In your last term, you did a deal with us and we bought loads of soybeans. The moment we'd finished paying for them and you delivered them, you put more tariffs on us. So why should we do what you ask us to do something, and then as soon as we do it, you stab us in the back every time? That's how. Now, the media would report it differently. They say China is holding America to ransom. No, they're not. China is simply responding to a situation started by America and escalated by America. I mean, we at one stage we had over 200% tariffs. So why would anybody say, okay, let's put an order in for your soybeans on any sort of futures market? Because we don't know what tomorrow brings with Donald Trump. And I saw the last comment you made. The guy's a nutcase. He's crazy. Now, there's a lot of things that he does that I actually agree with. Not sorry, I should rephrase that. There's a lot of things that he is setting out to try and do that I do agree with. I disagree entirely with the procedures and the processes that he's doing or using to do this. You have an American problem. Oh, there's a problem in America. You have an illegal immigrant problem. You have crime problems. You have all these things. But putting the military on the streets and grabbing people off the streets and deporting them in handcuffs, in chains like slaves. 300 years ago, you were bringing people in chains. Now you're sending them out in chains. And it's really like a full circle that America has gone. There's a lot of things that absolutely need addressing. Your military is top heavy. Your military is completely inefficient. It is grossly lazy. I mean, the fat shaming that Hexeth did the other day, I thought was brilliant, needed to be done, perhaps not in this way. This is what's wrong. I mean, he is trying to protect America. He's trying to develop America into the country it ought to have become, but it hasn't. And I can see what he wants and what he says, but I just can't agree with anything in the way that he does it. And tariffs is one way. He's got a problem. There is no manufacturing left in America except for bombs. There's a lot of agriculture left in America, but you're exporting services, legal fees, health insurances. You're exporting Microsoft and Google and these things. Yeah, you've got exports going out, but there's no exports of anything that is useful to the rest of the world except bombs and guns and missiles and tanks and airplanes. And they haven't got ships. Why can't they build a ship? I don't know what happened to that. Why can't America build a ship anymore? You're building one ship a year. What the hell's going on? China's building more ships in a day than America can churn out in a year. There's something very, very badly wrong with that. And it does need fixing. But putting tariffs on a country that's doing well is not the answer. It's bringing some rewards back to the people in your country so that they're incentivized to do it here. And I don't know the answer. I'm not a politician, though I don't claim to be. But certainly the way it's being approached now is very, very wrong.
Do you remember Tanya Harding? Tanya Harding was the one that hit Nancy Kerrigan in the knees with a pipe. Oh, I had somebody do it.
The Tanya Harding approach to diplomacy is the one that we're witnessing right now.
It's like hit China in the knees. Like basically hit him in the knees. We can't keep up. We can't compete. I mean, there was an article that was talking about the car industry. I think it was a Ford exec, if I'm not mistaken, and he was talking about cars. And he said, he says Tesla is competing in China because Tesla has been able to basically compete. Like they've had to compete. They've had to get better in China. Now, I get that BYD and many of these other car companies are much better than Tesla in China. But they were trying to make the point of saying American car industry didn't get the opportunity to have that competition, which is why we have crappier cars. And we can't really sell those cars anywhere else. And he was kind of bemoaning that. And I think what he misses the point is that your government didn't think you could compete. Like the moment that you put a BYD on the streets of America, it's very possible that the auto industry in the United States goes belly up.
Yeah, I'm older than you, and I grew up my formative years within early 70s to the 80s, where I was learning to drive and coming of age, that kind of thing. And yeah, my parents, my father had an Audi, a German car, nicely engineered, beautiful car, and my mother had this thing called a Morris Marina, and it was a junk bucket. Now, anyone who's British listening to this will go, "Oh my God, your mother had a Morris Marina." It was an awful car. It was terrible. And it was built for the European market. It was tundra green, which meant it looked like someone had vomited all over it. And it really was not a nice car. And she went out one day and she said, "I'm going to buy a new car." And she bought a Toyota Corolla. Now,
Mhm.
we were laughing at this because it came with a clock, a radio, an ashtray, and a cigarette lighter, all as standard. You had to pay extra to get these in the last car that she bought. In ashtrays in a car. You had to pay extra to get them. So then it went through a stage where you had to pay to have them taken out. But the fact was, what Toyota had done is exactly what China has done now. It's I mean, the technology is different, of course, but
Yes.
they have just produced a better car, and they're producing it at a better price, and it is better quality. And that's a fact. So instead of saying to the American market, "Oh, Jesus, we can't compete with this, so yeah, we should bring these in and we should try and get them to build their cars here and incentivize them to do that," what they'll say is, "Let's put 100% tariff on it so it costs twice as much." And a
Right.
decent BYD still costs less than a Tesla with 100% margin. But people haven't quite realized this. You can buy some very nice cars here for less than 10,000 US dollars. And
Really?
oh, yeah. Yeah, I was in one last night. I got a lift home from a friend. I've no idea what the car was. It was an electric Chinese car. And what happened? Got into this car and oh, this is a nice car. It's tiny, but there was 5 of us in it, and we all had leg room. I don't know how do they do this? This is a really nice little car. And the guy he's an English guy, he said it only costs 60,000 RMB. That's 8,000 US dollars.
Wow.
6,000 pounds, brand new, 5-seater electric car, and one of them was a kid, so the baby seat in the back. This is fantastic. You know, we can do that here. Why can't you do that in America? Well, this car is built by robots, and they used to make jokes about it. In the Morris Marina was built by robots. Robots.
Oh man, yeah, that's what you would want, right? I mean, you can deal with. Look, I don't want a human being having to do something if they don't have to do it. If you can build a robot to do it, the catch always becomes who owns that robot and those type of things. But if you can cut costs, even better. I'm curious on something else that's going on. Emmanuel Todd. Emmanuel Todd has had. Wait, first, do you know who he is? He's an author, philosopher, historian of sorts.
No.
All right. So he's French. He's a French author. His books are very interesting. He goes into effectively why the world is the way it is. He's one of those authors. And he makes this point of saying that in his mind, and I don't think I agree with him on this, but just for the sake of argument, that the United States is pulling back. It's accepted defeat from China on some level. Like, meaning it's acknowledged, okay, we can't keep up. We can't, as you pointed out, China can build more ships. The Navy is going to be dwarfed in a very short period of time. From the standpoint of Russia, that they, on some level, acknowledge that they've been beaten in Ukraine, but the United States or Donald Trump is clumsy. And so his capability of trying to get to that multipolar world is challenging because he's dumb. Give me your take on that. Is that the way China sees this, or
not the way I see it? Are you
that's
talking
not the way
about
I see it either?
Arnaud Bertrand? Is that the name that you said before? Arnaud
Well, no,
Bertrand?
he's in his mind, he thinks that
He sees this as a pullback. Yeah. I very rarely disagree with Arnaud on this. I've had Arnaud on my channel as well.
No, not Arnaud. Emmanuel Todd. Emmanuel Todd is the author. He's
Okay.
this.
Right.
He looks
So-
at the world. He's this French
Arno has adopted this same thing. So I guess because Arno is French, he's been reading the French in its original form. And he and I disagree on this. I mean, we agree to disagree on a lot of things. And there's no way I'm going to get aggressive with him and say you're wrong. I would say time will tell to see which of us is right. I'm living on the ground in China, and my experiences in China talking to Chinese people. He has a Chinese wife and 2 kids, and he's lived a long time in China. He understands China pretty well. There's no question about that. But on this one, we're going to disagree. I do not see any evidence whatsoever. I do see the rhetoric. It is rhetoric. There's a lot of rhetoric. But by the same token, there has been for many, many years rhetoric, all the way back to 1976. There's been rhetoric about whether or not Taiwan is a part of China, whether or not that Taiwan is going to be supported by the Americans. So this rhetoric has been going on for a very long time, but it hasn't actually been matched by actions. And I think that's the problem that I have with this particular story, that China is going to pull back, because you've got the Deputy Secretary of War, Elbridge Colby. He's come out and he's basically written the manual on what China needs, or how to contain China. His book was called A Strategy of Denial. Now, because he's written that book, and because he is now the Deputy Secretary of War, not Defense anymore, he's being treated quite seriously by China for obvious reasons. And I think where we are also seeing that the rhetoric is America must take care of these particular problems that they have internally. That does not necessarily mean that they must change their military capacity in Japan, in South Korea, in Guam, in the Philippines. In fact, there's no reason not to build up on those. They're building up in Australia too. So they're building up capacity for military, and they're getting those countries to pay more. So the idea ultimately is that they will get those countries to pay more to help contain China than Americans will contain China. So yeah, I get that they want to pull back, but they will not stop containing China. The strategy changes, the philosophy changes, the idea that and I was asked this about 3 years ago, can you ever see America and China in a war? No, I can't. Because if it was going to happen, it would have happened in the 1950s in Korea and the 1970s in Vietnam. That's what those 2 wars were about. They were not about Korea or Vietnam. They were about communism, and they didn't want to take China on. China was not a nuclear power in the first time, but it was just a very, very large country. And anybody who has any sense of China will know it's a very patriotic country. The people here love their country. They love their government too. They don't need rescuing from this dreaded CCP. They have the Communist Party of China, the CPC, run this country very, very well in a way that the people like it. 90% plus are happy with the way the country is governed. 100%, absolutely 100% would say, given that choice or that choice, and America being the other choice, I'll take the Chinese choice. That's 100%. Now, they may be dissatisfied with certain aspects of it, but they don't want changing. And America should know this. If they don't know this, then they're very stupid. But they would never take China on in a ground war, because they know this would not be Vietnam. This would be much more serious than Vietnam. It would not be Korea. It would be much more serious. I mean, even my wife, she's in her 50s. She'd pick up a weapon and she'd fight Americans if they were on our shores here. Simple as that. Every single Chinese person I know would. They would die fighting rather than give up, because it's happened before. It happened before in the 1930s, and they're not going to allow this to happen again. That's the reason why. So yeah, I think there is definitely rhetoric, and there's definitely changes in the systems. They're going to change the system. So Japan will spend more on defense, because Japan has a defensive constitution. They can't go on the aggressive unless they change their constitution. Sorry?
I thought they changed their constitution. I mean, I remember there were fistfights.
I may have missed something. I wasn't aware of that. But Japan has changed its defense force and is now spending more money on defense. and it is becoming more aggressive. But I didn't know they changed the constitution, and if they
No,
had, I thought I might have heard about that. They may have changed their strategy, but they're still, as far as I'm aware, your readers, your viewers can correct me if I'm wrong on that. But the fact is, South Korea, Japan, Guam, these places are all not changing. Everything is remaining the same. The Philippines are growing in military strength. Australia is growing in military strength. The Marshall Islands are growing in. These are all American military strength because there's no Chinese soldiers down there. There's no Chinese Navy or Air Force in those areas. It's only America. And then it's America saying, well, they're too aggressive. Who's aggressive?
What do you make of the Asian pivot then? I mean, because Hegseth, as recently as the last 4 months, went to the Philippines, went to Japan, went to Australia. Hey, are you guys willing to die for America? Meaning, it seems like.
Yeah, I think that's part of the strategy. What they're saying is, hey guys, when they won't say these words, we've got a bucket load of trouble back at home that we need to sort out. We need to focus on this. So while we focus on this, can you guys keep China contained for us? Can you spend more of your budget? Can you spend more of your money? Can you hold more of our troops and your own troops? And then China is constantly under threat from attack from Korea, Philippines, Manila, wherever you name it, everywhere around China. And this was one of the reasons why they wanted Myanmar, and USAID was spending buckets of money on security in that area, training of security, training of journalists. I mean, training of journalists is to manufacture consent for war. We all know that. Training of security has nothing to do with internal security. It's aggressively training people to be combat troops, because they would much rather see Asian bodies in bags than American bodies in bags, or American ships at the bottom of the ocean. So they want the Philippines to do this. They want South Korea to do this. They want Japan to do this. They don't care if Australia does or doesn't, but Australia will host a lot of this. So I see this as a change of strategy. They're trying to expand the local containment without changing their strategy of containment, while they focus on the internal problems that they have. The biggest threat to national security that America has, the FBI admits this in its papers, is homegrown terrorism, like domestic extremists. That's a much bigger threat than China will ever be to America. I think that's what Hegseth wanted these 300 generals in there for, to tell them this. You need to be prepared to come back here and protect us.
Yeah, that's terrifying, though. I mean, for Donald Trump to come out and make this argument that, well, we need to send troops to democratic cities and we're going to work these cities out. Okay, well, you're making this up, right? Like, you have a police force for a reason. The military is different than a police force. The military is trying to kill the police. I mean, these are different entities. And you're talking about sending them specifically to your political opposition's cities. Like this, I don't know, but this feels like unraveling to me.
I would say the meeting yesterday that took place in Washington, I think it was in Washington or Virginia, with that meeting with 300 generals, that meeting was to either avert a civil war or potentially to crush a civil war, because I would suggest that there must be hundreds of senior staff officers at very high levels saying, this is wrong. What we're doing now is wrong. Putting troops into Memphis, putting troops into Portland, this is wrong. And those people are going to be, if they haven't already been, asked to swear an allegiance to the commander-in-chief. Now, they swear allegiance to their country, they swear allegiance to their flag, they swear allegiance to their unit, military, navy, all that kind of thing. But no one has ever asked a general to swear allegiance to a president. The president is their commander-in-chief, so it's part of the structure, but no one has ever been asked to swear allegiance to a president's policies, which is what I can see happening here. Now, we're going to see probably a load of generals losing their jobs fairly soon. And what are they going to be replaced with? In my opinion, they're going to be replaced with a lot of yes men, because good generals would never accept what happened yesterday. Good generals, good admirals would never accept that. And the people who work in the military follow the good guys. So this is why I see this as a really dangerous situation. bringing all these people in here in at one time to crush dissent has created potentially a lot more dissent. Those generals are going to go back to their units and they're going to tell their subordinates what they fear most. And their subordinates will swear allegiance, because the swearing of allegiance is to the country. If the country is at threat and those generals feel that the country is at threat from this man, the orange man in the Oval Office, then they will defend their country, not the Oval Office. They're not going to defend the White House. They're going to defend the office of president, but they're not going to defend the lunatic who is president. That's my view. And it's purely an opinion. We'll see what happens.
But therein lies the rub. It will be a breakdown. It'll be a break. Like for example, take it like a YouTube show. Two people have an argument on the show. Yeah. The audience breaks. They fracture. It doesn't matter who's right. Like you can have an argument. Well, I think 2 + 2 is 4. I think 2 + 2 is 5. You will still get a fracture. It's just like, I think we went to the moon. I don't think we went to the moon. There will still be a fracture. Flat Earth. It'll still be a fracture. And I think what you get is
just getting back on the Chinese topic. The Americans are now announcing that they want to get to the moon before China. People in China are going, haven't they already been to the moon? They don't need to race China to the moon. China says we're going to put people on the moon by 2030 or whatever the year is. And America's saying we need to get there first. And everyone here is going, they've already been, haven't they?
We don't have the capability. I don't think we have the capability anymore.
Well,
I mean, we can't even do
it in the 1960s or 70s or whatever. 69, I think it was the first one, wasn't it? Yeah, I watched it. I watched it live.
Yeah. Oh, did you? Oh, that was that had to be a hell of a moment. I mean,
I did. I was in school, a boarding school, and because it was a boarding school, I was kind of allowed to stay up and watch this thing happening. I remember watching it live. I mean, it didn't mean much to me. I think I was 11 years old. I was born in 58, so yeah, that's right. I was 11 years old when it happened.
Still, we had a competence back then that it doesn't seem we have now, and that's what I'm saying. And from the standpoint of the generals, I think it'll fracture. I think you have some people who would back the president. I think you have some people who say the president is out of his mind. And
I mean, you have a lot of those generals would probably be Republicans, and they're probably Republicans who are saying, I didn't vote for this.
Some.
Anyway, time will tell. I mean, I'm sitting in China. I'm not on the streets in America, so I really don't know. Someone made the comment, I don't know what's going on the ground. That's true. I don't. I'm just giving an opinion here because we're talking about it in general. It is just my opinion. Please don't think that I'm an expert on what's going on the ground in America. I'm just telling you what I'm seeing in China and what my Chinese friends say to me as well. What's going on there? But they did have a lot of Chinese left when they saw a male general wearing a skirt. That sort of thing was really.
You said they left. You said they left when they saw a male general wearing a skirt.
Oh yeah.
It shocked them. It shocked the conscience. It was like, whoa, we got to get out this country. This is going.
There is no issue. There's no issue with transgendering in China. That's another of those myths. Everyone in China goes to Thailand for a holiday, and they all go straight down to Patpong Road to see the transvestite shows. All of my Chinese friends who've been to China have all come back and said, "Have you seen this girly show?" I haven't actually. I've been to the region and I've seen plenty of them, but I've never been and paid to go to one of those shows. But all of my Chinese friends, all of them have, and they go there to see it. There's no issues about this. They have transvestites, they have transgenders, they have lesbians and gays here in China. No issues with it at all. I mean, it's traditional issues where parents are upset and disappointed when their child doesn't go the way they want it to go. But that's traditional stuff. Society doesn't care. But then you see this guy who's supposed to be leading men into battle wearing a dress, and you start to think something's not right about that. So in that respect, I kind of agree with what Hexeth said. It's like, we've got to, it's if you want to do that off base, that's fine, but not when you're leading men. It's not the right image for a country that wants to intimidate. Doesn't intimidate very well when their general's wearing a dress.
By the way, I agree with them on the woke stuff. It's a military. It's supposed to be lethal. None of this other stuff is supposed to matter. Jerry, you are fantastic, man. I always appreciate your breakdowns. I always appreciate you joining me. I
It's
love
always a
that
pleasure.
picture in the background. And just so the audience would know, Jerry Gray, host of Jerry's Take on China. He's lived in China more than 20 years, has traveled more than 30,000 kilometers across the country. You have a safe rest of your night. Be safe, okay?
Okay, thanks very much, and I'll see you next time. Thanks to your audience again.
Bye-bye. Jerry is fantastic. Jerry is